I think the struggle in my painting is very literal representation of the struggle in my life, which is trying to escape gravity.
I mean, I don't want to make this sound like I come in here and I light candles, and quite the opposite. You know, I'll put on Roxy music or something from 1972 and just blast it. And it does the same thing to me.
All during the 80s, I was living in New Mexico in the summers, and after many visits to the small chapel in Chimayo, the Santuario de Chimayo, I came back and I made a drawing that seemed to reflect a different presence in the work.
Every artist, at some point, you have an idea and you develop the idea. And ideas, like all living things, have beginnings and they have ends. And they die. They wear out, you can stretch them out, you can expand them, you can try to go sideways. But at some point, when you've gone down a certain path, you find that you've run out of room to move. I really literally just couldn't paint anymore. I stopped. And I went back to this drawing 3 years later in 1988. This central figure here, I realized was in direct response to the image in the crucifixion. And as this form mutated, it formed a thorn. I wasn't a religious painter, but I was an abstract painter who wanted to use this tradition because it was appearing in my own work.
Like me.
this was a big shift for me in the work, and really happened completely by surprise and not by plan. It wasn't as though I was sitting around thinking I needed to paint about something. It's that I did paint about something. I looked at it, discovered that there was something in it that attracted me at that particular time in my life. Something that had to do, and this is the core thing of what my work has been about, is something to do with moving from material to immaterial, moving from opacity to transparency, moving from weightlessness to that, from a strong sense of gravity.
We all know you're very grounded in reality, and you have an ironic sense of humor. And you're going for this mystical and slash religious sort of idea. So how do you feel, what do you say to yourself when you're painting these paintings? Do you say this is ridiculous, or do you just let yourself go and go for it?
How do you shut out the traffic, and how do you shut out your secular side, or how do you engage into that trance, that thing that happens when you make painting or drawing? And I'm sure all of you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter where you're at. When suddenly you lose yourself, you find that you're involved in a kind of almost automatic sense of building something. And one of the ways of doing that is by playing music, because it's another art form that you can get swept away in. You lose self-consciousness. The painting is the world that I can create that I don't live in. It's the alternative to where I live. I have full control of it, whereas I don't have any control over the world that I live in physically. I have very little control, particularly in New York City. I'm trying to build a world that I want to go to, that I can think about, that I can dream about. That has to do with longing more than it has to do with defining where I am or how I live. So how I behave or how I act with my ironic sense of humor or whatever it is. You know, everybody has different sides to their life, and when I'm here and when I'm private, and when I'm really trying to reach something, it's almost like picturing it as a place to go. And that's different from living it, you know, on a daily basis, which is much harder for me. That's why I make paintings about it, I think. In 1993, I'd done a body of work in El Rito, New Mexico, which included a shape, almost a mathematical figure, which had a space in it. That wasn't right. Kind of image that wouldn't be so particular to a religious ideology, but would have within it some representation of transcendence. I expanded that space to the point where I realized that what I was doing was essentially painting the sky. I was now able to create a series of pieces called the Starry Floor, the Starry Pole, and the Watery Shore. The titles were all taken from William Blake, Introduction to the Songs of Experience. And that culminated a whole body of work and closed off a whole idea for me. Finally representing something very directly that I've been after all this time, which in some ways really began in '85, and how I could find what it represented to me. It was an idea out there for a long time, and then I realized that these paintings were about this need to create this sense of longing towards another state of mind.